This episode contains graphic content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
So he's already been around disrupting their life for 6 months before the first very faint symptoms show up. As a parent, is that not the scariest thing you can imagine? I mean, you have spent 20 plus years of your life protecting this child, preparing every step from her first day at school in kindergarten through to her college, making sure nothing bad happens. And then if she falls down and scrapes her knee, you're there to brush off the dirt and kiss her and tell her, how to deal with these traumas. And without your knowledge, some monster that's invisible has come in and destroyed all of that.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Welcome to Awareness, a show that reveals the stories beyond the headlines. Up until this point, you have been made aware of online grooming starting on episode 1. We found out that Bianca connected with her trafficker via Instagram. You heard from Krista Miller, episode 4, how her daughter was being tracked on Snapchat. Both were groomed to trust the perpetrators. And then you heard the stories of Breck Bednar, episode 5, who found someone who truly understood him, and Alicia Kasakevich, episode 6, who connected with someone who she thought was a trusted friend. We now know Alicia was kidnapped and tortured for 4 days, and Breck lost his life. These stories all had elements of grooming. This is the most underestimated danger of being online today. Until now, all the victims of grooming revealed on this show have been teenagers. On today's episode, Dottie Laster returns with a truly shocking story about an adult being groomed. As parents, we pour our hearts and souls into raising our kids, spending countless moments filling them with love and building an unbreakable trust. A trust we believe will stand the test of time and will be impervious to anyone trying to break that bond. As parents raising our kids in the world of smartphones, tablets, and online connectedness, we are fighting an uphill battle, unlike anything seen in history before. The devices we hold dear are producing the effects of addiction. And just like any addiction, the effects make people behave in ways that are uncharacteristic. It is this dependency that groomers are adept at exploiting. Today we're going to hear how important it is to prepare our kids, to give them the tools they will need as adults to understand how to use technology appropriately, because a lifetime of love and trust can be destroyed in 18 months. Stay with me. For the purposes of this story, the names have been changed to protect the privacy of the family. Dottie will be sharing the story of a person we will be calling Sarah, a college student whose mother reached out to Dottie for help.
So I was contacted by a mother whose daughter was in college, and she was in her last month of the last year of a 4-year university and had been doing very well until the last semester. So 3.5 years, The parents had actually paid for college out of their pocket, not grants or scholarships. They actually had saved and had multiple kids that they had paid out of their pocket to put through very expensive schools.
By all accounts, the family dynamics were good, and the parents were fortunate enough to be able to pay for their kids' higher education.
They had been very successful as a husband and wife. No divorces, no breakups, no instability in their children's lives. They were, they attended community events, churches. Her mom was very prevalent in social issues and even elected type political events. Very well known in their small community, and had succeeded in life basically all the way through raising their children.
Sarah's parents were very loving and engaged.
They were very engaged, and in fact, they would talk about Sarah was known as her father's daughter, loved her dad, loved her mom, but there were jokes that she was his daughter and really was much like her dad in a good way, like not in a conflict way, but in a loving way, and was very proud to be their child, had made straight A's and was on the way to advanced degrees in medicine. So she was enrolled in a medical school a month away from graduating from college with her undergrad. So had been accepted, was on the way, had worked in the medical field. You just look at this and go, my gosh, I mean, there's no glitches here. There's no glaring reason why this should have happened at all.
These would be the type of parents that would say, this could never happen to me. You would not think this family would be a target for a predator. They didn't meet all the risk factors. However, as mentioned in a previous episode, there is no profile of a victim of grooming. Anyone online is a target because they are on the internet.
Exactly. They were the parents. Not only would they say it, but people that knew them would say it. Even people that witnessed them raising their kids would say, man, they got a handle on this. They really succeeded in every way possible.
Dottie tells us how it all started.
It started with hi on the video game. First of all, she responded. That's all a bad guy wants. Just respond. I'll take care of the rest. So someone that responds is showing a weakness that he's going to probe further. So in that beginning phase, he is gathering information. He is learning everything he can about her hopes, her fears, her dreams, her anger, her purpose in life, arguments that she had with her best friend or her parents or her teacher. He's gathering this intel. So for this first period of months, he is listening. And isn't that seductive? Think about it. Would you like to come home and someone would just listen to your every problem and take your side? Heck yeah. I think it's called a counselor or psychologist. We pay a lot for that as adults. Oh, you can do no wrong. And I'm here, in taking it further, I'm here to make you feel better. So he is now absorbed all this information. Now, if you flip around and look at it from her perspective, as we're young adults, we're collecting our firsts, right? That's what moving from childhood to adulthood really is. Our first kiss, our first prom, our first A in college, our first win at a track meet, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on and on and on. And, when you get married, it's our first time we made love at this hotel, or, you keep accumulating them. So imagine, in her perspective, she is now about to become an adult with a degree, like she's not just a school kid anymore. But in the messages which I read, she hasn't had sexual experience except by being raped. And we found a connection between the guy that raped her and this guy.
During an investigation, evidence was found to support that Sarah was set up. The groomer recruited a local guy that we're going to call Brian. Brian then bumped into Sarah as a way to meet her. They developed a friendship. At the right moment, Brian then raped Sarah. This was all part of the plan, with the intent to prep her so that the groomer could sweep in and be the person to support her in her darkest hour. This would be Sarah's first sexual experience. Dottie explains what was documented on the messages.
Exactly. And it says so from her inner text. And she talks about her first kiss, what she imagined it to be, what it was, like really in-depth conversations that you probably don't really have in real life, You probably don't describe what you hoped your first kiss would be like as well as what it was actually like. But this is what this guy, who's well in, almost 40, is taking his time to listen to and guide her on. So imagine the narcissistic, he thinks he's like, Dr. Phil, he's like such a wise, seasoned loser in life. But she doesn't know he's a loser. So he's guiding her on all these things. Her biggest fear is, I don't want to disappoint my parents. It's like, wow, that's interesting, because now, you pretty much have by the time I'm reading this. Her biggest fear was not reaching her goal to be in the medical profession, blah, blah, blah. So real in-depth personal items of information are exchanged to someone she's never seen and to someone who is at her disposal. Like when she wants to talk, boom, he's right there ready, willing, and able to spend 2 hours listening to some argument she had with a teacher. So think about that. It doesn't happen every day, right? It's like, So on her perspective, she's becoming an adult with his guidance. She must look at him the way I described my college professor, as this lucky break that embraced her and became her mentor and guided her through life. And the problem is it's not true, but she doesn't know it. Right? So there's my college professor who selfishly did guide me through life, asking nothing in return. And this guy who acts like that, but he's not only going to ask for something in return, he's going to take her entire future. So it's, how do you know when someone's being nice to you that they're just being nice? Well, you don't. But what you do, the difference is the intention. And so his intention from before he met her was to take her future and everything she was going to be. He has to do that in order to exploit her. He can't exploit a confident 20-whatever-year-old person on the way to medical school, right? That won't work. So he has to take that, but he can't take it without her giving it up. Well, how do we get her to give it up? You trick her. And that's what he's doing. So he will put in the time. And so that leads to all night conversations when he knows, because he knows everything about her, that she has a big test tomorrow. And all night conversations that are keeping her from focusing on the future. And in those conversations, she's starting to falter in school now. He's saying, school is not for you. You're too bright to be in this school like everybody else. So he's falsely building her confidence and also taking it away. I always call it the Chinese finger trap. Every way you wiggle, it tightens up. So you are great in school. She was great in school. She had straight A's. But he's saying she's too smart for that school. They're losers. She's successful. So he uses her success to actually alienate her from what she was good at. And now she's struggling because idiot has kept her up all night. And now what he said, he's right. I don't belong here. So he is creating her new perspective of herself and the world. And the reason that works is because when we can't see the whole picture, our brain fills in the gaps. An example being, when you look at a printed piece of paper, it's really just dots, but we see it as a complete image. Well, we do that with people as well. So the further away he is and the more she doesn't know about him, the better off he's going to fare in her mind. So now he knows everything about her. And she doesn't even realize that she knows absolutely nothing about him. So while she's been talking, he's been going, yeah, tell me more. That's all she knows about him other than his username and whatever he tells her to call him. She doesn't know. And I see this over and over, especially with girls. We talk like idiots, blah, 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 never realizing no one ever else gave us the information. There's no balance in information. And so she doesn't know much about him, only enough to keep her talking. But he knows everything about her, including where her parents live, their address, her brothers, the fights she had, family conflict, even conflict from her parents' childhood. I mean, if you stay up all night with someone several nights in a row, there's a lot of content.
Dottie explains how Sarah was hooked using online gaming.
Well, unbeknownst to the parents, there was an online game that their daughter had been very prolific in playing. And the online games, which parents really need to take into account, have interactive components. And so she began chatting with someone that was playing this online game. And it started as, I won. The bad guy was letting her win. And then maybe he'd beat her and then he'd let her win. And so the entryway was very benign. It probably happens to everybody. If you're online gaming, you win some, you lose some. You don't know that that's actually a plan and a tactic.
There were multiple games from which this predator was connecting with Sarah. The most notable one is Dungeons and Dragons.
And, it's a popular game. Lots of people were playing it. It's kind of an adult level game, nothing bad, but, it's not a little Mickey Mouse game. It's kind of graphics and storylines are geared towards adult people. So you wouldn't get that there was anything wrong. Parents, as parents do, would visit at times college, and their daughter Sarah would come home, and they started noticing she was not as engaged in her sports, and she was starting to say, I don't like school. And they thought, well, she's been there 4 years. She can almost see the light at the end of the tunnel. Kind of normal to be tired on your 4th year of college. Yeah, I remember even as an adult, I was kind of tired of school, right before I was about to succeed and get my degree. So again, you see some trouble, but you think, well, that's probably normal for where she is in life. Well, then they notice she starts to wear some jewelry that they didn't recognize. And they also start noticing that she didn't want to come home now. And again, they know something's wrong, but they don't know what it is. And so rather than thinking, oh my God, someone's going to take my kid, they're trying to find out, is it something we said? Can we help you with something?
Sarah had all her basic needs taken care of. She didn't have to work. Her parents fully supported her.
That's true. They had provided her off-campus housing, a car, food, tuition, and that's going to be later used against them. I mean, it's amazing how these people that would do this to another are very, very brilliant at psychology and conflict and dividing and conquering. And she had come up against one of the best I've seen. And so at the time I'm at now, they're probably at about a year. So he's already been around disrupting their life for 6 months before the first very faint symptoms show up. As a parent, is that not the scariest thing you can imagine? I mean, you have spent 20 plus years of your life protecting this child, preparing every step from her first day at school in kindergarten through to her college, making sure nothing bad happens. And that if she falls down and scrapes her knee, you're there to brush off the dirt and kiss her and tell her, how to deal with these traumas. And without your knowledge, some monster that's invisible has come in and destroyed all of that.
All those moments from birth to adult, providing for their mental, emotional, and physical needs, can be eroded in such a short amount of time.
It is the most evil thing a parent can experience. It's every monster that you protected them from. It's every accident, every neighborhood child sex predator you worried about that could move into your neighborhood. It's every disappointment that you could ever worry she would experience, all brought in and you don't know it's there.
At this point in the story, the grooming had been going on for 12 months, and the family disconnect has moved to another level, and the relationship begins to deteriorate between Sarah and her parents begin to notice.
They did, and they didn't know why. They were getting argumentative responses or text or comments from her as if they'd somehow been horrible parents. And they're like, wow, she's never expressed any of these feelings before. They're just kind of shocked. They don't know where it's coming from. So of course they ask, and she doesn't tell them. She doesn't give them a solid answer as to why she doesn't want anything to do with them, or doesn't want to come home for Christmas, or snapped at them in a very hurtful manner. We've all raised teenagers. Well, I mean, you're going to raise a teenager. We've raised teenagers, so we kind of know they can be moody, but they got past that. Right. I was a horrible teenager to my mom. I know I was just a little smart aleck. And so again, if you raised a teen and she's, maybe in her 20s, you're thinking, was she regressing? As a parent, you've got to, I know they were going through what is going on. So they ask her siblings, and they don't know anything. They go, well, she didn't talk to us anymore. We don't know what she's doing. She's always playing video games and always texting. And so that's when they ask the siblings, they start to realize, well, why is she always texting? Who is she talking to? And so they're starting to get a clue there's someone else, but they still don't know what the depth of what's going on. And it becomes her secret to protect, because that's part of the deal. Part of the grooming is to not tell anybody. And it's very precious to her, because at this point, he's making her feel really good. In fact, ridiculously good. And that is that is luring, especially to someone you've never met, that they can make you feel so good. And so this is the beginning of the side effects, but they're increasing exponentially and rapidly, very rapidly now. So it's like a snowball running downhill. It starts off slow and then it builds momentum. Well, now we're at the bottom of that hill and it's about to fall off the cliff.
Dottie explains what the proximity of the parents was to Sarah.
They did travel. I think they traveled, fairly frequently. It wasn't a long distance. It was kind of the perfect deal because she was away, but she wasn't out of reach. It wasn't a distance or a plane ride. It was hop in the car and take a long ride. And they had other kids too there. So, they had many frequent opportunities which they took to visit and go and, be a family. But she was withdrawing from that.
I asked Dottie if the family had any special occasions when the family would gather without exception. For example, like Christmas or Thanksgiving.
There were. It started with she's here, but she's texting on the phone and won't talk to anybody. And then, maybe it was one, I don't remember the dates, but let's say that's Thanksgiving. Well, then by Christmas, she's like, I don't even want to come and don't call me. And then maybe by Easter, she's just gone. She's not even making any any contact, even when we're calling and texting and pursuing her now. As before, they're trying to go, we don't know what's wrong. And then it moves very quickly into we're pursuing her because we have no contact with her. So it's very rapid. Now, in between this time, she reports blacking out, losing time, shaking. She's still in school, but she's starting to falter on her grades. She's starting to falter visibly, like more visibly now. So they actually took her to a doctor, a neurologist. And this is what I don't think parents can understand. That grooming is not benign. It's not a choice. Once talking to the guy was a choice, yes. But falling into this control, at some point, she lost that choice. Or he took it, is the better way to say it. I think we observed that she did something to cause this. But it's like flying into the spider web of a spider. Yeah, you chose to go that direction, but you probably, as a fly, did not know you were flying into the spider web. And now you're in there and you can't get out. Well, she's in that struggling phase at this point of something has happened and she doesn't really know what it is. She doesn't know. She can't make logical choices right now. Because at this time, there's been hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 messages exchanged. There's been Skype sessions. There's been sleep deprivation and very targeted manipulation with a purpose.
Dottie elaborates on the sleep deprivation.
Yeah, so you have a college kid. We're all kind of sleep deprived as we're studying for finals and all that, but that's like short term. This is ongoing, where he is taking up all of her mental space. That's why the grades are starting to fall. Even in class, she's thinking about him. Even when she's saying, I can't take a phone call, he's texting her. Even when she's saying, I can't play video games tonight, I have to study, he is probing and pushing and reaching out to her. She's now experiencing physical and mental pain, and he's the answer to relieve that. She doesn't know he's the one causing it because he's mysterious. He's wiser. He's older. He speaks to her in a way no one else does. Well, of course, because he's a freaking predator. But she doesn't know that. He doesn't wear a T-shirt saying, I'm going to exploit you to the ends of the earth. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I am the best thing that ever happened to your life. It was fate that brought us together. And I am meant to guide you through the rest of your life. Your purpose now lies with me.
We are now 18 months into the grooming, and the predator has established rules to exert his dominance over her.
Yes, they haven't met in person. She's been sending pictures of him of herself daily. She has to do one when she wakes up and one when she goes to bed. And there's a list of rules that he created for her. You will tell me everything. You will withhold nothing. If you withhold something, then the pain you're feeling won't go away. You will make all decisions by talking to me and only me, as I am the one that can guide you. So he's giving her rules, but he's couching it as help. So it's like conflicting, but very clear in its direction. And at one point he writes, I am your God. And she responds, you are my God. So he has not only inserted himself as this, first of all, love interest, but then he takes it into an all-encompassing interest. He writes that he's every part of her, every aspect of her. So it's not just, this is a flirty guy and it may work out or not. He's taken control of every part of her life, including her creation. What a narcissist piece of dirt. Her parents and our creator made her, but in their minds, he did.
I asked Dottie if she knew if the family was religious.
Yes, her family was. He alienated that very quickly. But yes, they were. Because religion comes with rules and helpful things to be successful, such as, like don't have sex with people you're not married to, honor your mother and father, respect for yourself because you were created by, a loving God. You have to take all that away and replace it with a distorted version. And so that's what's happening.
Approximately 18 months from the moment this predator said hi to Sarah. And now the grooming is complete. Dottie explains the psychological, physical, and familial damage that was left behind.
So now parents are freaking out. School is starting to fail. She's getting words from her professor. She's not going to graduate. And she's actually, instead of addressing that, she withdraws from school with no explanation to anybody. Her parents have paid $100,000 and now she's not in school. Can you imagine? I mean, just take all this other garbage away and this horrible thing that's happening and imagine the betrayal and the pain that a mom and dad would feel. Just on the surface, like that's the least of their problems at this moment. But when you stand back and look at it critically, that's a big problem. You were 1 month away from being a self-sufficient, some sort of adult, even if you didn't continue on. And now you're a high school graduate with some college. And you're being an idiot to boot. And so the parents are now freaking out. But the reports from the doctor's test and observations were as if she had a neurological, they listed 3 or 4 neurological diseases that they thought she had. And the doctor couldn't conclusively with tests identify these possible diseases or injuries that he thought, like malfunction. I guess malfunctions are the right word. I'm not a neurologist, but there could be diseases, there could be injury, there could be chemical malfunction. And he was listing some pretty severe sounding possibilities based on her symptoms and his observation. But then when they have tests for that, she would come back normal. And the doctor was very confused as to what was going on. He clearly saw that there was a problem, was ordering more and more tests because he couldn't figure out conclusively what was wrong, but there was something very wrong. And I thought that was interesting that doctors could be educated on this, because if you could not find out something was wrong, but you had these very clear, visible symptoms that not only did she report, but he observed: the shaking, the passing of time, the incoherent sentence structure, blah, blah, blah. Then one might need to look past the medical and look into the environment, which of course was the grooming. And I don't think he had that knowledge to ask, because she was in such distress that while forgoing all her other activities, she willingly went to the doctor. She was really in pain. And isn't that astonishing?
Now, at this point, I had a hard time making the leap to believing how this could happen to an adult. After doing a bit of research, I looked into the mechanism, in this case, being online and using a mobile device, to explore how this could prime the person being targeted for grooming. On April 9th, 2017, Anderson Cooper, as a correspondent for the news program 60 Minutes, released a story called "What is Brain Hacking? Tech Insiders on Why You Should Care."
Have you ever wondered if all those people you see staring intently at their smartphones nearly everywhere and at all times are addicted to them? According to a former Google product manager you're about to hear from, Silicon Valley is engineering your phone, apps, and social media to get you hooked. He's one of the few tech insiders to publicly acknowledge that the companies responsible for programming your phones are working hard to get you and your family to feel the need to check in constantly. Some programmers call it brain hacking, and the tech world would probably prefer you didn't hear about it. But Tristan Harris openly questions the long-term consequences of it all, and we think it's worth putting down your phone to listen.
This thing is a slot machine.
How's that a slot machine?
Well, every time I check my phone, I'm playing the slot machine to see what did I get. This is one way to hijack people's minds and create a habit, to form a habit. What you do is you make it so when someone pulls a lever, sometimes they get a reward, an exciting reward. And it turns out that this design technique can be embedded inside of all these products.
The rewards Harris is talking about are a big part of what makes smartphones so appealing. The chance of getting likes on Facebook and Instagram, cute emojis in text messages, and new followers on Twitter.
There's a whole playbook of techniques that get used to get you using the product for as long as possible.
Yeah, what kind of techniques are used?
So Snapchat's the most popular messaging service for teenagers, and they invented this feature called Streaks, which shows the number of days in a row that you've sent a message back and forth with someone. So now you can say, well, what's the big deal here? Well, the problem is that kids feel like, well, now I don't want to lose my streak. But it turns out that kids actually, when they go on vacation, are so stressed about their streak that they actually give their password to like 5 other kids to keep their streaks going on their behalf. And so you could ask, when these features are being designed, are they designed to most help people live their life? Or are they being designed because they're best at hooking people into using the product?
Is Silicon Valley programming apps, or are they programming people?
Inadvertently, whether they want to or not, they're shaping the thoughts and feelings and actions of people. They are programming people. There's always this narrative that technology is neutral and it's up to us to choose how we use it. This is just not true.
Technology is not neutral.
It's not neutral. They want you to use it in particular ways and for long periods of time because that's how they make their money.
While working at Google, Tristan Harris became frustrated with all the excessive communication he was receiving. So he created a presentation.
And I ended up making this presentation. It was kind of a manifesto. And it basically said, look, never before in history have a handful of people at a handful of technology companies shaped how 1 billion people think and feel every day with the choices they make about these screens.
His 144-page presentation argued that the constant distractions of apps and emails are weakening our relationships to each other and destroying our kids' ability to focus. Do you think parents understand the complexities of what their kids are dealing with when they're dealing with their phone, dealing with apps and social media?
No, and I think this is really important because there's a narrative that, I guess they're just doing this like we used to gossip on the phone. But what this misses is that your telephone in the 1970s didn't have 1,000 engineers on the other side of the telephone who were redesigning it to work with other telephones and then updating the way your telephone worked every day to be more and more persuasive. That was not true in the 1970s.
Still not convinced that we're at a disadvantage? Well, here's a bit more.
Most tech companies say their priority is improving user experience, something they call engagement, but they remain secretive about what they do to keep people glued to their screens. So we went to Venice, California, where the bodybuilders on the beach are being muscled out by small companies that specialize in what Ramsey Brown calls brain hacking.
A computer programmer who now understands how the brain works knows how to write code that will get the brain to do certain things.
Yes, it is.
Ramsey Brown studied neuroscience before co-founding Dopamine Labs, a startup crammed into a garage. The company is named after the dopamine molecule in our brains that aids in the creation of desire and pleasure. Brown and his colleagues write computer code for apps used by fitness companies and financial firms. The programs are designed to provoke a neurological response.
You're trying to figure out how to get people coming back.
When should I make you feel a little extra awesome to get you to come back into the app longer?
The computer code he creates finds the best moments to give you one of those rewards, which have no actual value. But Brown says trigger your brain to make you want more. For example, on Instagram, he told us sometimes those likes come in a sudden rush.
They're holding some of them back for you to let you know later in a big burst. Like, hey, here's the 30 likes we didn't mention from a little while ago.
So all of a sudden you get a big burst of likes.
Yeah, but why that moment? There's some algorithm somewhere that predicted, hey, for this user right now, who's experimental subject 79B3 and experiment 231, we think we can see an improvement in his behavior if you give it to him in this burst instead of that burst.
When Brown says experiments, he's talking generally about the millions of computer calculations being used every moment by his company and others to constantly tweak your online experience and make you come back for more.
You're a part of a controlled set of experiments that are happening in real time across you and millions of other people.
We're guinea pigs.
You're guinea pigs. You are guinea pigs in the box, pushing the button and sometimes getting the likes. And they're doing this to keep you in there.
Brown says there's a reason texts and Facebook use a continuous scroll, because it's a proven way to keep you searching longer.
You spend half your time on Facebook just scrolling to find one good piece worth looking at. It's happening because they are engineered to become addictive.
You're almost saying like there's an addiction code.
Yeah, that is the case. Since we've figured out to some extent how these pieces of the brain that handle addiction are working, people have figured out how to juice them further and how to bake that information into apps.
Okay, so these guys are just some techies speculating, right? Not so fast.
Dinner table could be a technology-free zone.
While Brown is tapping into the power of dopamine, psychologist Larry Rosen and his team at California State University Dominguez Hills are researching the effect technology has on our anxiety levels.
We're looking at the impact of technology through the brain.
Rosen told us when you put your phone down, your brain signals your adrenal gland to produce a burst of a hormone called cortisol, which has an evolutionary purpose. Cortisol triggers a fight or flight response to danger.
How does cortisol relate to a mobile device, a phone?
What we find is the typical person checks their phone every 15 minutes or less, and half of the time they check their phone, there's no alert, no notification. It's coming from inside their head telling them, gee, I haven't checked in Facebook in a while. I haven't checked on this Twitter feed for a while. I wonder if somebody commented on my Instagram post. That then generates cortisol, and it starts to make you anxious. And eventually your goal is to get rid of that anxiety, so you check in.
So the same hormone that made primitive man anxious and hyper-aware of his surroundings to keep him from being eaten by lions is today compelling Rosen's students, and all of us, to continually peek at our phones to relieve our anxiety.
When you put the phone down, you don't shut off your brain. You just put the phone down.
Can I be honest with you right now? I haven't paid attention to what you're saying because I just realized my phone is right down by my right foot, and I haven't checked it in like 10 minutes.
And it makes you anxious.
I'm a little anxious.
Yes.
We found out just how anxious in this experiment conducted by Rosen's research colleague, Nancy Cheever.
So the first thing I'm going to do is apply these electrodes to your fingers.
While I watched a video, a computer tracked minute changes in my heart rate and perspiration. What I didn't know was that Cheever was sending text messages to my phone, which was just out of reach. Every time a text notification went off, the blue line spiked, indicating anxiety caused in part by the release of cortisol.
Oh, that one is, yeah, that's a huge spike right there. Right here. And if you can imagine what that's doing to your body, every time you get a text message, you probably can't even feel it, right? Because it's such a, it's a small amount of arousal.
That's fascinating.
Their research suggests our phones are keeping us in a continual state of anxiety, in which the only antidote is the phone.
Is it known what the impact of all this technology use is?
Absolutely not.
It's too soon.
We're all part of this big experiment.
What is this doing to a young mind, a teenager?
Well, there's some projects going on where they're actually scanning teenagers' brains over a 20-year period and looking to see what kind of changes they're finding.
So there it is. One possible explanation as to why someone like Sarah can be susceptible to the effects of grooming, even as an adult. When a new friend, one that tells you what you want to hear, who is always responding, gives you all the attention you need. When you combine this with messaging and apps on mobile devices, it is now believable how someone can fall victim to these machinations. Because our devices are promoting connectedness to the device, one can easily misinterpret that connectedness with the person on the other line. Now, this process is much more complicated than just this simple explanation. Research is currently being done to examine all the complexities. Dottie continues to tell us how Sarah was being manipulated by the groomer.
It is extreme, but it does happen quite often. So we talked about sleep deprivation. He was also influencing what she ate and cutting down protein. Protein deprivation also causes you not to think so clearly, combined with inducing stressors. Introducing her to things, it was pornography and websites she never had the experience before with dealing with. So now she's seeing shocking, disturbing images. And he's ordering her to these sites and telling her what to look at. And then they're on Skype, so I don't have the messages. Then he's discussing with her what she, quote, learned. Because, now he's like a professor. And so he's educating her on how to be successful in his world and make all this pain go away. But she's not equating that he is the one causing the pain. Now, by that time, he's villainized her parents, and they've started to try to get into her life, and they're upset she's withdrawn from school, and they're pursuing her, going, why didn't you show up for great-grandma's 85th birthday, or, whatever the latest event was. So they're fulfilling his prophecy that she's too good for them as well, or that they don't understand her like he does, and that they're part of the pain that she's experiencing. Now, the reason that works is when our body, especially at a younger age, sees things we can't comprehend, like those websites and porn images and probably pretty violent, disturbing sexual acts. We, as a species, our neurology, which is why it makes sense that she was at a neurologist, our neurological processing changes. When we are traumatized, we don't file memories the same. We don't process our perspective the same. So she's sleep deprived, food deprived, and now she's traumatized, not once, not twice, but an ongoing period of time. And this is how you change her memories, her history, and perspective. Because when her brain is traumatized from violent, scary, sexual things that she never had witnessed before, her brain doesn't know where to put that file. And so it's like, I equate it to my messy desk. It's just shattered everywhere. And it's not in the neat file folder that says, okay, 10 years ago, I saw this picture on the website and it's filed away. No, her brain is firing as if she is in that trauma. And maybe he's done some things to make her believe she's in that trauma. Remember the rape that I believe was connected to him because we found a connection. So now she's got a physical experience, the mental experience, the sleep deprivation, the food deprivation, and he is now her isolating force because she's alienated school, family, religion, all the things we go to when we're having a bad day, and it's only him. And so does that make sense now, how a traumatized young woman could make these actions that defy everyone who is not privy to all the information? It would totally make sense. And that's what victims often do present as bipolar or PTSD or mean, just for some reason they've turned evil and mean. And this is why it's so, we talked in the early part of this, how few cases get reported. As you see the complexity, you can realize, well, first of all, that's not going to look good for prosecution. She called this guy 1,000 times. How is she a victim? And then two, she is the worst witness we could ever think of because she honestly doesn't know what's going on. And so that's why Yes, piece at a time. It's you cut your heart out with a spoon because it hurts worse. That's basically what he's doing, is cutting her soul away with a spoon, one scoop at a time. They don't get you. They don't understand you. You're better than them. They're mean to you. They spanked you when you were 12, remember? And how that made you feel? He's not going to talk about because she ran in front of a car and almost hurt herself. They're going to go, for no reason, they spanked you when you were 12. And so he's going to bring up all those things in the beginning that she confided in him about because she had this great guy that listened to her.
Now that the groomer has complete psychological control over Sarah, he readies to take physical control over her.
Right. He's getting ready to make his move, but he's got to make sure everything's in his favor. Like, he wants to make sure it works when he makes the move. And she's getting close. So at this point, we're getting towards the end of the 18 months, and now he's introducing her to his family, including his wife and children.
You heard correctly. This guy had a wife and kids.
And so now she has had all her barriers removed, and she's cool with that. And so now they're friends, and this is the family that she doesn't have. Because, she doesn't have a family, right? Because he erased them all. And so she's got this amazing love of every type possible, from sex partner to father to now a new mother and brothers and sisters. Now remember, she has all these things, but he took them away. So imagine you think, I don't have brothers or a mom or a dad or a community or school. Now I have him giving me his family.
For obvious reasons, I asked Dottie if the family knew about what the groomer was doing to Sarah.
Yes. Maybe not the children because they're various ages from young to teen. But the wife knew, and the possibly, other family members. So now she's got this gigantic extended family. And they don't know all the details, let's put it this way, but they're in on trying to get her to leave. So they don't know about the 700 to 1,000 texts. They just know that he wants them to make her feel comfortable so she will come and be part of their family now.
I asked Dottie if at this point, if the groomer had already had sexual intercourse with Sarah.
I don't think so in person, but virtually, yeah, there was stuff like that going on. And eventually he does go down without his wife's knowledge and does have sex with her. So this would be around 18 months now.
I have mentioned in previous episodes that it seems like the groomers consummate the grooming process by having sex with the victim. So I asked Dottie if this was in fact true.
You are correct. And that's now. So imagine you've had no sex prior to this. You get raped. And your next sexual experience is this guy who has become her entire world and has presented himself to her as brother, father, lover, advisor. He's everything. He's not just a lover. He's God, in the flesh. And she has nothing else in the world. Now, all these days she's feeling bad. She's suffering alone except for him. So, when you have a bad day or somebody's mean to you at work, normally you tell a couple of close friends and maybe your husband or wife, and you sort through it in your mind what to do next or how to process it. You fall asleep, eat some chocolate. I love chocolate when I'm stressed. And you deal with it in these healthy ways. She has been denied all of that for the better part of this 18-month grooming period. So every bad day she had, whether he orchestrated it or just life did, she has now had to process it with none of these things. No chocolate, no sleep, no calling your best friend or your mom or your grandma or even your advisor on the college campus. So she's built up all these traumas that come from just everyday life. And so now he's blessing her with this extended family. And he's had sex with her, so now he kind of is God. I mean, if you're kind of new to the sex thing, he has some pretty intense feelings as well. I mean, if we all think back, my gosh, my first love, I still have feelings of appreciation for, not like this, not twisted, but, those are memories that are your first. And so now he's one of the first. She's been raped, but not, had sex like this.
The groomer traveled over 1,000 miles to Sarah's home to have sex with her in order to establish that physical connection.
So he goes home and they get back on however they're communicating. It's all kinds of ways now, and he's got open access. And he goes, hey, I talked to my wife and we think you should just live with us. Well, she's still in the throes of passion and belief and shock and sleep deprivation. Sure, come on down. So they drive literally all night and through the next day and load her stuff up from the house that her parents are paying for, off campus housing. And they leave her car because they know the parents will come looking for the car because it's in their name. And they take her back up to his house, states away. They literally take her back there and take her to the place where he lives. The extended family is also his wife's family and all the kids. And they're all living in a house that's like less than 1,000 square feet. So remember, she grew up in the stable, affluent, not wealthy, but, affluent, stable, nice neighborhood. And now she's in this hovel. And can you imagine? There's no personal space. There's no anything. And now this wonderful new addition to the family is going to take care of the kids. This girl has a $100,000 education and she's working free because they're so nice to her, take care of, like 6 kids of all ages. So her parents don't hear from her. They know right away she's gone from school because she's got siblings there. They don't know where she is. So 2 or 3 days pass. They're freaking out. And so she calls. So they're so grateful that she calls because they thought she's dead, Well, yeah, they knew she had left with someone, but not who, not where. They went to police and they go, well, she's not really missing. She's an adult, she can meet an idiot online if she wants. And so that's the beginning of, trying to figure out now we know there's a person, and so now this precipitates them to get into the phone because they own it, the messages, and oh my gosh, are they getting that unwelcomed dialogue and images and descriptions of sex and stuff they never wanted to know. And so this is when now they've gone from panic to just outright terror. And so when she calls them, they're grateful to hear from her because she's alive, but they're no closer to getting her free. In fact, maybe worse now than ever, because she has gone willingly, cut off all her ties and said, don't call me anymore. And this happens in multiple cases that I've worked. So by the time they find the person, they've already been instructed, don't contact me anymore or I will file restraining. If you come get me, I'll file kidnapping. They just go down the list. Here's everything I expect a parent to do. And if you do it, here's what's going to happen. So the parent is neutralized and they just now got all this information about their worst fears in life. They know this is bad. They know, like I said, the least of their problems is losing a $100,000 education. That's like the smallest problem now. It is life and death. And then she retreats further with no communication with anyone they've ever known. She is now completely isolated, geographically, communication-wise, emotionally, and physically. And now they know this guy's been having sex with her and talking about her having sex with other people that he wants to direct because he knows what's best. And of course, as this is where the dad is coming apart.
Dottie saw messages from the groomer where the groomer explicitly told Sarah what his expectations were of her.
He was like, well, when you're here, I have these friends, and I need you to instruct them what I've taught you. And so I want you to have, when I tell you, sex with them. And he's been grooming her, in the skills of controlling other people. Because remember now, she's lost all control. But she doesn't know it, but he is teaching her how to control other people, which again, through sex and images and porn, has become her new purpose in life as he has molded it.
I wanted to know if in any communications that Dottie saw, if there was any mention of Sarah being paid for any of the tasks she was asked to do.
No, because she's superior to needing to worry about that. She doesn't need to worry about money because she lives with them. And by the way, she has money, and it's slowly draining out of her account, like a lot of it. She wasn't a poor girl in any level.
At this point in the story, the groomer now has Sarah at his home, and he is no longer having sex with her. So the relationship changes.
And now, if they're with wife and stuff, he's not going to have sex with her. Other people are at his direction. So that's now how he's evolved their relationship. Now she's like a daughter to him. So remember, he was everything to her, all these roles. Now he's picking and choosing what he's going to be. And so, yeah, that was part of the deal. There was drugs and sex that were being exchanged. She would do anything they asked. They had her working at a local fast food restaurant. I think that was where they were exchanging either dates and or drugs. So there was like this whole network of criminal activity they were funneling through her. And it was not proven, but it was observed by investigators.
I asked Dottie if the parents tried to confront her to try to get her back.
They did not, actually, because they had been so isolated. They had tried that earlier, and they knew. And this is what happens to parents on most of the cases I work on. By the time they get to the point where you think, oh, my God, and now I know who he is, they are neutralized, because if they show up, the little thread they know of their daughter, they're afraid to lose. Like if they show up, he'll hide her, or she'll leave. Or they'll have me charged with trespass and I can't get back. Or I'll get a restraining order, whatever. All these systems are in place to keep them, okay, we know where she is, so you can't report her kidnapped, but you also can't actually see, talk, or have any information exchanged between them. And this happens over and over and over. This is a tactic. It's not an accident. Parents do get arrested. Not because they're criminals, but because the bad guy has already groomed that environment to hurt them. Now, by this time, let's say she's not cool with all that's happening. Because, she never got the full story till right now. And it's happening, and it's not pretty. It's not good. It's not what she wanted. Well, by now, a couple of things have happened. If he needs to threaten her, he has. And he's threatened her on his turf, not hers. And he's threatened her in a way that she has no escape. So it might be that he beats her. It might be that one of his quote friends rapes her again. It might be that he's friends with a police officer who comes and shows off his power. It might be that there's someone near her parents and they send a photograph and go, you don't do what we say. Guess what happens to them? This particular guy and a lot of many others are part of groups of people that work together, organized crime, gangs, networks. It's not just him. He's just the guy that's nearest to the victim. There's others. So they can reach with a phone call, a text, a promise. They can reach across the country. And so whatever kept her there could be entirely just the grooming, or it could be the grooming and further threats that nobody knows about. This is why they don't wind up in court. This stuff happens where he has control. She can't speak. And she is going to now get into this point of learned helplessness. So once she gets there, he has given her the recruiter's dream speech all this time. And now he is going to reinforce actually what he wants, not what she wants, because that's what the first part was all about. They were answering all her needs and desires and hopes and dreams and blah, blah, blah. They were the answer to everything. Now that's over. and reality has set in. And now it's what he wants and what she's going to do. And so she might try to get out of there at some point. And at that point, that's when the reinforcing trauma comes in, whether it's a beating or a rape, or maybe she witnesses somebody beaten or killed. And then it solidifies everything else he's done. Now his goal is to get her to learned helplessness, so that even if somebody were there to help her, she is not going to try to leave because the cost would be too high. Whether it's killing her brother or parents, or raping her again, or, destroying something that would cause her to be compliant. And think about it, that works on everybody. We're easy. I'm a parent. You got me around the little finger if you were to threaten my kid. And so he's figured out what that is by now. So at this point, we went from seduction, targeting was prior, with the guy that raped her, targeting, seduction, getting her to talk to him, grooming, that process we've discussed, before she left. Then, I don't know if the right word is acquisition, but, taking control of acquisition, getting her physically. And then it's going to be reinforcement. Now the truth comes out, and from that reinforcement goes to learned helplessness. And this was the goal all along, was the learned helplessness, meaning no matter what I do, my fate is sealed. I can't complain. I can't leave. I have no options. So I better surrender and get in survival mode and just do what he says.
I wanted to know if Dottie knew what the groomer's ultimate goal was.
I believe he had several. One was clearly, more than I've ever seen, this particular character or set of characters enjoyed the grooming. That was more, as in most predators, the adult sex predators of children, often the grooming is more exciting than the actual having the sex. And I could see that in the messages. That was true in this case as well. The next thing was the domestic labor, that they all benefited from that. There was the actual money that came with her. And then when that was out, I think that's when they went further with the drugs and likely the prostitution. So it was part of harvesting every opportunity. And in another case, very similar to this one, very much like this, and there's been multiple cases. This is extreme as it isn't unique or rare. I've got many cases that all sound like this. One particular one, they actually harvested a young girl's eggs from her ovaries and sold those as well. So there is no end to the way they will exploit people. If someone has gone to this much effort, there is no end of the exploitation.
Dottie explains what has become of Sarah.
After about 9 months and a lot of efforts on everything from pair to law enforcement to extraordinary efforts, she left. And she chose to never speak to her family again and went with extended family, and has attempted to restart school, but in a different field. Like, all that education is just gone. So the good thing is, a victim of this magnitude is clearly easily manipulated. And so through some very creative efforts of a lot of great people, and even a few not so great people that didn't know they were being used, she was rescued.
Even though Sarah was rescued, the damage had been done with her biological family.
Yes, the destruction from there appears to be long-term. Her memories are not what the reality shows. And I see in her early texts where she talks about what a good family she has, how much she loved this or that person, blah, blah, blah. So it's not just me believing the family. I have her own words that she loved her family. Her biggest fear was ever not being a part of her family, disappointing her parents, especially her father, blah, blah, blah. So it's not, I come at this very analytically, and he destroyed a beautiful future, a loving family. It's just like he wadded it up like a piece of paper and stomped on it. Thankfully, they still are on a quest to reunite with her. They have done a huge amount of effort. In fact, so much so I've said, my professional advice is do nothing. Perhaps not being pursued would help. And so they've tried everything. I trust there seems to be something magical about 4 years that I see in the victims after about 4 to 5 years for some, that they have a change in perspective. And I hope and pray that that's the case. We may have, I can't remember what year this was. We may have passed it, or it may not be here yet. But I hold in my heart that that magical time will arrive soon, and her perspective will kind of become clearer.
Dottie gives us a few takeaways from Sarah's story.
The takeaways would be that our kids in college are still vulnerable. So just because you got them to college, I'm sorry, parents, you are not off duty. The second thing is we need to know our kids' vulnerabilities as much as the bad guy does. We need to be interested. And I know, I still have things I didn't tell my parents. Nothing bad, but we protect our parents. And don't think your kid's not doing the same. Don't think you've got this. Parents, your kids hide stuff from you. Grow up and accept it. Be inquisitive, nosy, and investigative when something's wrong. Do not respect their space. They are always your children. I don't care if they're 2 or 62. You are the steward of their lives. And it doesn't age out at 18. So that's definitely a takeaway here. Get nosy as quick as you can. You are the expert on your child. Don't doubt yourself and get in their business. One of my teammates says, if you don't have time for your kid, there's always someone who does. And boy, he says that meaning it's bad, The other thing is trust your sibling. Siblings, if you have them, are the best intelligence source you will ever get. They collect information on each other and they use it for leverage later. Do not be naive to how much information siblings have. It's vast. They're like the CIA, but within your family. Go get that information, especially when you're starting to sense those signs we described. Grades are falling. She's withdrawing. Man, the siblings had it. They knew. And that's where the information often comes from.
I asked Dottie to explain what she saw from the parents and what they went through when they saw Sarah's communications with the groomer.
Unfortunately, her mom and dad and I got to read about it. And, this is one thing, just an aside. How kids go, ooh, I don't want to know about mom and dad having sex. It's really, really more gross than that when you're a parent, especially a father, reading this crap about your daughter. It breaks men down in a way I can't describe. It hurts them. It hurts women too. But for a father to be seeing his daughter through this guy's words or pictures or video or whatever the parent comes across is a hell that words will not describe. And I've held many a dad that's a strong law enforcement or military background as they break down because of this. It's a very painful, life-changing, hurtful experience to see your daughter through the eyes of a predator and see what she's done because of the predator. And I don't think people take that into account when they're understanding what trafficking is and whether strip clubs and pornography and sex should be sold. No, they shouldn't. It's as barbaric as it was in the 1800s to sell slaves. It is a horrible experience for everyone involved, and no more so than the parents, because they feel their child's pain and their own pain for this child they protected all these years. They feel angry, hurt, every bad thing they didn't want happen to their child. When you put your child out to the school bus, right, you're worried that someone would come and take them and hurt them, right? They feel every day that they protected her from that is gone. And that monster they worried about every day has their child and they can't get her back. And it's a pain that a father will cry, the guttural, primal cry as he's seeing this. And that's why I urge parents, don't think you've got this. Don't be hubris in your parenting and thinking it won't happen to me, because you never want to feel the pain that I hear in those moms and dads, but especially those dads. You just don't want to do it. Even a dad that's been absent, I've held and heard that guttural cry. The guy that didn't show up for 12 years suddenly for some reason gets brought in when the kid's missing. I hold that dad and he cries the same as the one that was there every day. No parent should be in this position.
As our kids get older and they begin to apply the learnings we have imparted on them throughout their lives, it is important that we develop a friendship with them and connect with them on a different level, to show them that we can adapt and change as their personalities begin to fully express themselves. They need to be able to trust us on a different level.
And you were right about that. Develop that friendship with your child, because they don't know that you can handle those texts that they're so embarrassed about. You may be hurt, but you can handle it. In fact, you may have to. So you need to tell them, show them, demonstrate, I don't know how to do it. You're the expert on your kid. They don't think you can handle this. You need to let them know. Not just saying, come to me and it's okay. You got to demonstrate, I am a tough parent. Hit me with your worst because I am here for you.
Dottie Laster is a big supporter of this show. I thank you, Dottie, for the support you have given me. Thank you for sharing this story with us so that we may learn, so that we may become aware. I want to thank you, the listeners, for being patient with me during the last few weeks. As promised, Dottie has one more story for us that will be coming in 2 weeks at our regularly scheduled release date, which is Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Central Time. And that's going to do it for this episode. The social media links for this podcast are in the show notes, and you can connect with me there. Dottie's contact information can be found at awareness.podcast.com/guests. Thanks to Shane Yoder and his team at puttheminasong.com for the theme music, and Ed Luby for the awareness logo. And as always, to my family, I appreciate all the support. Without you, this would not be possible. Until next time, stay engaged and stay aware. I'll talk to you soon.